Good evening. I'm Nora McInerny. For months and months, our team has been gathering grudges, and tonight, we share them with you. Several years ago, a therapist advised me to write about my own grudges, to get into the details, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, to get them out of my head and onto the page. So I did. Oh, I did. I dedicated a fresh notebook to this practice, an entire notebook. I wrote and wrote and wrote about the hurts that I had experienced, the wrongs I had endured, the ways I had been disappointed or betrayed, bamboozled, led astray, and it helped. Sometimes in the process of this documentation, I realized that actually I was the a-hole. And sometimes I gained more compassion for the person who had hurt me, and sometimes I saw that my pain was valid, that what happened was real and really sucked. And this process did exactly what my therapist said it would. It helped me to let go, literally. Because on a cross-country flight, I left that notebook in the seat back pocket of an airplane, a notebook filled with details. Grudges like that. I let it go. All of those grudges, and my grudges are somewhere in a Delta Airlines lost and found. Now, many people will tell you to let go and be the bigger person, but not me. I want you to tell me your grudge so I can hold it for you and you can release your grip. So, let's begin. Please note that all names have been changed to protect the petty. Here's our first grudge. 20 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom of 3 young children in the middle of an ugly divorce. I found the only apartment I could afford in a building owned by a known slumlord who happened to be the relative of a friend of mine. I was trying to get out on my own, backed solely by a secret savings account I'd been funding with freelance projects. When I moved into the awful apartment, I needed a landline and found out the fastest way to get it was to have my landlord arrange it and then have the line switched over to my name. Because my divorce was still a secret at this point, anytime I made a phone call, I used *67 because the phone wasn't in my name yet. One day, I had to make a phone call to someone part of a volunteer organization that both my ex and I were members of, and I forgot to *67. When she answered the phone, she demanded to know why I was making a phone call from my landlord's house, and I realized I'd forgotten *67. I insisted I wasn't at his house, and she insisted I must be. This led to her informing people at our volunteer organization that I was having an affair with this man. The news got back to me, and for years, I would arrive at an event at our children's school and see her pointing at me and whispering behind her hand. I still hold a grudge toward her. Honestly, so do I. I hold that grudge for you. I hope that today that woman has an itch that she just cannot scratch. Moving on to our next grudge. 2 weeks after my mom very unexpectedly died, and before her funeral had even happened, my childhood best friend texted me to announce that she was pregnant. Just to be clear, she knew my mom had died. She had sent me one text, "I'm so sorry," but she had also known my mom for 20 plus years. Her mom had attended my mom's funeral. I seriously cannot believe that this bitch thought it was appropriate to text me about being pregnant when my mom had just dropped dead all of a sudden, let alone when her body was still in the dead people fridge. It has been a year and 4 months since this happened. I've blocked her on every platform. She actually texted me the other day and I immediately deleted it. I'm still holding a grudge. And so are we. We'll hold that for you, especially because you said dead people fridge, which is not a phrase that I had heard of, but it is very evocative, it is very accurate, and I do agree that while you should be able to share your good news with friends, maybe don't do it while your best friend's mom is still in the dead people fridge. So our next grudge is special because it is a workplace grudge. I worked in blood banking for nearly a decade, and in 2018, as a site supervisor, I was in charge of running something called Blood Collectors Week. Blood Collectors Week is where all the phlebotomists are celebrated for the work they do. Okay, I love it. My coworker had a super cool week planned. We did tie-dye shirts, we made goodie bags, we planned a meal, etc. At this time, I had 2 supervisors, an assistant manager, Jeff, and a manager, Kate. Again, names have been changed to protect the petty and also protect the guilty. Kate was awesome, and she knew I had to work early at the start of the week, so Kate delegated the coffee and donut delivery for all the teams to Jeff. Great. It was handled. The week was amazing, lots of praise from my coworkers, and everyone enjoyed it. 2 weeks later, at my one-on-one with Jeff, he asked how I thought the week went. I said I heard nothing but good things and how everyone loved it. He then laid on me. Yeah, it was okay. I think you needed to do a better job at making sure things were delivered to everyone on time. Do a better job? Really, Jeff? I was furious. I will never let this go, even though I don't work in blood banking anymore. I think about it every time I wear my tie-dyed shirt from that week. God damn it, Jeff. You know who should be thinking about that every time he sees tie-dye, coffee, or donuts? Jeff. Jeff should be thinking about that, but Jeff probably isn't. And that's why we hold this grudge. If you are holding on to something that happened to you when you were a kid, something that other people might consider unimportant, something that other people might look at you and say, look, it's been decades, let's let it go, you've come to the right place. Because we have a lot of childhood grudges to share, and they start here. On the first day of fourth grade, in the middle of the lunchroom and in front of everyone, my best friend, throughout third grade, said loudly to me, you know you're not my best friend anymore, right? And no, I did not know that before that moment. That was news to me. We were not friends ever after that, and I've held a grudge against her ever since. Okay, guess what? You didn't want to be her friend anyway, and you're not the only one who is still holding on to something painful from decades ago. Let's move on to high school. In 7th grade, my best friend since pre-K dropped me like a hot potato. She was a cool cheerleader, and I wasn't. Junior year, I was dating a guy who was kind of popular and a senior. All of his friends told me that he was going to ask me to prom. I was so excited. I hadn't dated much as I wasn't a cool cheerleader. He ended up taking my ex-bestie to the prom. Why? I have no earthly idea. He danced with me that night and then started making out with me again after school was out. I hold grudges against both of them because who treats people like that? When I see her now, she tries to be all sweet to me and she's found God these days, but I just want her to leave me alone. I also hold a grudge against myself for letting that dumb guy treat me that way. I would like to take a moment to talk to all the young girls out there and the young girls inside of all of us. It's not our fault when someone treats us badly. It is normal to expect somebody to be kind to you, especially when they're dating you. The boys and then men who have mistreated us, mishandled our emotions, our bodies, our trust, they did something wrong. They are the people who should be staying up, replaying these situations. The bar is so low for them that when they trip over it, we say sorry. If I have any hope for the next generation of girls and women, it is that they fall in love with themselves first and foremost. When someone hurts them, they realize that it has nothing to do with their own worth. My high school was very, very small. To put it in perspective, my graduating class had 30 kids, and we were a big class. Part of being a small school is having underqualified coaches for sports that were sometimes just there for adult supervision. I was the captain of the cheer team my senior year, which basically meant you lead practices, come up with all the routines, you're essentially the coach. At the regional competition, the actual coach, and yes, I'm using so many air quotes here, can you sense the grudge coming? We can. That coach won Coach of the Year. This was based off of our performance as a team, that I, as a 17-year-old child, had worked very hard for free. She got paid, so that's cool, to make happen. This grown-ass adult did not give me any credit at all, didn't even thank me for my hard work. She seemed to think that she was very deserving of this achievement. Her achievement, air quotes again, being spending most of our practices smoking cigarettes in the parking lot. She made a very nice glitter sign though, I'll give her that. That's my very silly, very old, nearly 20 years ago, my God, grudge. One time in high school, a teacher called me unseemly. This is me talking, which is really an icky thing to say to a high school girl. I was a virgin, not like it matters, but like unseemly has like kind of a specific meaning to it. I don't know, like I swore a lot, maybe that was it, but I never forgot it. And now he keeps trying to be my Facebook friend. And the answer is always going to be no.
Let me think. No.
Okay, speaking of high school, we actually have an audio submission from our buddy, Kathleen Downs, also known as Squeaky Wheelchair.
Hi. So I definitely told you about this in our Instagram DM banter, but here's a dramatic retelling just because it's a grudge that I will hold on to literally forever. So my high school science teacher, if she's out there, you know who you are, and you know what you did. When I was a senior in high school in her marine biology class, I was disinvited from the field trip, which it was a required boat trip for a science lab because, quote, it was too much work for her to order a wheelchair bus. Not that I wanted to go on a boat with this terrible woman anyway, but she straight up told me I wasn't invited because she didn't feel like ordering the wheelchair accessible bus. So, yeah. Never got over that one. Also, the same teacher who was supposed to be setting up a note taker for me because it is very hard for me to use my hands due to my disability. She said in front of the entire class that I could probably write for myself if I tried harder, and chose to humiliate me in front of the entire class. When I called her out on it, she said that she had no idea my hands didn't work well, even though they don't exactly look like a blue ribbon model, if you will, as far as hands go. But anyway, this teacher was also in charge of the teachers union, and that just made her whole attitude worse. But the best revenge is doing well. I got the highest grade in her class, and wherever she is now, I hope she is having a miserable retirement because she's the worst teacher I ever had. The end.
Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing that, and we are on your side. Next grudge. In 2007, my cousin said, let's all go to this concert together. I said, count me in, tell me how much. A week later, she mentions that she got 3 tickets. 1 for her, 2 for her friends, and asks, am I still going? When I said, I thought we were all going, and I let you know I wanted to go, she had the gall to say, well, you can still purchase a ticket. They're still available. Purchase a ticket and sit by myself? What the heck? I am still mad at this. And I, Nora McInerny, do not blame you. In 2007, the etiquette around concert tickets was that one person buys the tickets and everyone pays them. I don't know what it is for young people today, but sometimes I would buy multiple tickets for a show before I even had anyone who wanted to go. So your grudge is approved for further holding. Let's keep going. 1, I used to be an elementary school teacher, but I burned out like so many. 2, I have a small group of girlfriends from high school who I remained close with throughout college and the decade plus since. One of these friends had a college roommate who I never really clicked with, but due to proximity, we hung out a lot after graduation. I did my best to connect, include her, etc. for years, but I found her annoying and rude. I think she was a computer science engineering grad, and she seemed to find herself superior to others. Shortly before my quarter-life crisis that led me away from my hometown and the classroom, she was over at my house for a cookout. In conversation, she said something about how the farther out she got from school, the more true she found the saying, those who can't do something become teachers. I was immediately insulted, told her so in an epic in memory, but actually very likely uncomfortable for others, rant. I wrote her off, never invited her to anything ever again, and she remains one of the only friends of friends who I actively refuse to ask about. I get it. Honestly, it takes a bold dummy to insult teachers to a teacher. What? Like, what? Did you teach yourself engineering? Have you heard of having a thought and just keeping it in your head? Have you heard of a journal? We're moving on to our next grudge, and this is a grief grudge. And grief grudges hold a special place in my heart. When I see a grief grudge, I think I'm automatically on the griever's side, knowing often that grievers are not always at their best, that they can be unreasonable, unkind, like unwell. I'm predisposed to be on this person's side. So here goes. My mother and stepfather lived in a small 55+ apartment. My mother has dementia, and with it, limited mobility. She's been in a wheelchair for many years. When she was more independently mobile in the chair, she could get around the apartment on her own, except for the living room. Years ago, my stepfather built a coffee table out of an old ship grate. It was a cool table, but way too big for the room. My mom had asked me to talk to him about removing the table short term so she had more room to get around. I offered to store it in my house. He refused. He actually said, the only way that table is leaving my house is with my dead body on it. And so it still sits there. My mother is now in a nursing facility. My friends and I have vowed to burn the table upon his death. I hate that effing table. May the ugly coffee tables you burn light the way. Honestly, like that table should leave with his body on it. Maybe that should happen sooner than later. I'm not suggesting violence. I'm just suggesting that. I don't know what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying I'm on your side. Okay. Our next grudge came in outline format. So it is a series of grudges, some more connected than the others. So please pay close attention. A, my younger brother told my kids and my older brother's kids that he effing hates your mom when we were all visiting my grandma's house. At the time he said it, he was mad because he challenged me when I asked my kids to get their coats on so we'd be ready to leave the restaurant for dinner. And he said, "Why bother? Grandma won't be ready for another 15 minutes. I said he could do what he wanted, but my kids needed to get their coats on. Really, he was mad at me for other things. I reserved him a hotel room with handicapped bathroom access because he was over 300 pounds and had broken our toilet previously, and he was insulted. And he launched into a tirade about why. He died 2 years later, and we still weren't speaking. B, at his funeral, my friend, let's call her Jenny. Jenny came to the funeral ostensibly to support me, but she drove up with 2 other friends, then insisted on leaving immediately after the funeral and not coming back to my brother's when I was with my family and actually needed friends for support. He died in November. In January, she asked how my holidays were. She could have driven separately and did not. We were super close before that, but now we text on birthdays, if that. C, honestly, my list of grudges about this should really be handled by a therapist that I'm too cheap to pay for. Never mind, but it's a long list, like my hoarding mom, who doesn't host any family holidays, which is why I had to have 10 guests overnight every Christmas, and my older brother, who made me buy his son a suit for the funeral and told me I couldn't talk about why I was mad at my younger brother, and the coworker who didn't cover my projects while I was out on leave. It keeps going. D, lighter grudges. Some jerk ate my bagel from the break room fridge. Even worse, I was pregnant at the time and constantly fighting nausea. Total jerk move. E, a friend pointed out a dead bug in our ceiling light when we had a group over. So rude. This was maybe 15 years ago. Still mad about it. F, a friend talked about how he could never be Catholic because he knew too much about church history. His parents are German. The same friend told us how gross our fat jar was, and then called to tell us, "Thought you should know that the house painters are painting your trim white." Yeah, we chose white because we like it. Thank you for sharing your opinion we didn't ask for. We're still friends with that guy. Okay, I was on board with all the grudges. I was tracking A, B, C, D, E. What's a fat jar? What is a fat jar? I don't know what to do with it. He insulted the fat jar, but I don't know what a fat jar is. I'm gonna be on that one for a while. The next category comes from one of the most stressful things in life, weddings. My brother's fiance asked me, and only me, to go with her to look at bridesmaids' dresses. I was very honored to be asked and kind of assumed that the day-long excursion meant that I was going to be one of those bridesmaids. Do you ask the groom's only sister to help choose bridesmaids' attire if she's not in the bridal party? Apparently, because I wasn't asked. Even after a day-long excursion to multiple bridal shops. And yes, when I remember, it still hurts. Did I ever say anything to either of them about it? No, I did not. They're divorced now. Well, I'm not going to say it's because of her bridal party choice, but I don't think it helped. I don't think it helped the fate of their marriage. Oh, we have another wedding one. Okay. I still feel salty about playing all the music in someone's wedding, a wedding planner, no doubt, and only receiving a mug in return. Hours of practice, hours of travel, and gas money, and I got a mug. It's worth saying that this was not even a close friend. The same thing happened again later on, but instead of a mug, I got a t-shirt. I learned my lesson and started telling them my cost up front. I need to say this with love because I understand how hurtful that would be. And also, when you tell people that you'll do something, but you don't tell them the cost, they might not think they have to pay you, which is slightly bananas. But if you say like, oh, it's fine, or oh, we can talk about that later, and you don't immediately set the expectation of the price, you will get a mug, you will get a t-shirt. I don't mean to victim blame, but they will give you what you told them that all of that work was worth, which is basically nothing. I say this as a person who has also said, no big deal, I would love to do it, and then overextended myself and then resented the person who let me overextend myself. Throw the mug away, donate the t-shirt. You do have to let this one go. Okay, all of these have been mostly fun, a little bit of light-hearted grudgery, except for Kathleen. That was actually really messed up. Also, the coffee table one, that was pretty messed up too. But I do need everybody to put on your sincerity hat and put it on tight, because the next grudge is a big one and we are going to have to do hand exercises to hold it. Get ready. This is a big one. Okay. This probably exceeds the realm of what most people consider to be a grudge and probably is actually something that requires some amount of therapy, but I can't seem to let it go. So I'm sending it out into the world in hopes that it will stop eating me alive. Here it goes. I'm holding a grudge against my father for conceiving a child outside of my parents' marriage and not telling anyone about it for decades. About 2 years ago, my father came by my house unannounced one morning to casually share with me that he had conceived another child before my parents were married, and now this woman had reached out to him to confirm that after taking a DNA test, he was her dad. Surprise! Happy birthday. He told me that it happened before my parents were married, and the timing made sense based on the woman's age. She's a few years older than me. He shared with me that at the time he had been sleeping with a woman who was married to someone else, and when my dad found out that she was pregnant, he knew immediately that it was his child, but he decided not to do anything about it or be involved in the child's life because this woman's husband did not know of his wife's affair with my dad. Fast forward a few years, and my dad and mom are now married and have 2 children. My brother and I grow up as the only 2 children in our household, not knowing anything about the other kid that existed. Upon finding out about our new half-sibling as an adult, I spoke with my mom about it to see what she knew, if anything. According to her, my dad had mentioned this to her before they were married, and she was okay with marrying him anyway. Red flag, anyone. Growing up, my relationship with my dad was not always good. As a young child, he was mostly present and caring as a father, and I remember many fond family memories. But as my brother and I got older, my parents' marriage began falling apart, and it became very clear that they couldn't continue being together. My dad started traveling for work, which, among other things, made them fight a lot, and eventually they got divorced. I also found out later that he had been unfaithful to my mom many times, kept a secret post office box where he sent his personal mail, and racked up a bunch of credit card debt in both his name and my mom's. They both eventually had to file for bankruptcy, which caused all sorts of financial snowball effects. When I was a teenager and young adult, he struggled with alcohol dependency, and I was the person he contacted whenever he was drunk and needed a driver. He once got into a domestic dispute in the middle of a bar with a woman he was seeing at the time, and the police called me and told me to come pick him up or they would arrest him. I was 19 at the time. I guess some would say I should be thankful that he sought out a driver instead of driving himself, but you can imagine the kind of trauma this eventually caused me by making me act like the parent in these situations. All that to say, our relationship has had many ups and downs, and news of this new half-sibling that I have did not sit well with me. I've struggled for 2 years to accept this situation, and I've had an even harder time finding people to talk to about it. It's incredibly isolating, and I've struggled to figure out how to respond. As an added bonus, my husband also refuses to see my dad unless it's an absolutely unavoidable situation, which makes things even harder for me. I've chosen not to show up for various family events recently, partly because of my husband's anxious responses. Anytime I try to talk to friends or family, most of them usually take the stance that this woman deserves to know who her birth father is. And she does, but does it have to come at the expense of my relationship with my father? Throughout all of this, I am most upset about 2 things. 1, I feel very much like I've been replaced by this woman. She's been very accepted by my extended family, even though they all know how I feel, and she also has 2 children who my dad now considers his grandchildren, something he has been begging me for years, and I have been unable to give him. He is a doting grandfather, and they spend much more time together than my dad spends with my husband and I. 2, I'm upset because I feel like she's getting the better version of him, one I didn't get. I got the version of my dad who was absent, who struggled with alcoholism, who made me carry the weight of his emotional baggage, who was an awful spouse to my mom and just generally continues to cause me a great deal of stress and anxiety. She's getting a version of him who's present and loving and dotes on her children, and in return, he gets a daughter who actually likes him. I feel like I've been ousted from my own family over something that is not at all my fault. And it has been an incredibly lonely journey trying to figure this shit out. Whew. That is a lonely journey. That's a lonely journey. And those are grudges that I think are okay to hold against your dad. It's not your fault, any of this. It's infuriating at best, and you're right. A therapist could help you sort through this and make sure it doesn't eat you alive. But a therapist probably wouldn't tell you that your dad sucks. This sucks. And anyone who doesn't see your point of view also sucks. But those are the facts. And trust me when I say that everyone who sees this video is going to hold this grudge for you. You're not holding this grudge against your half-sister. You are not upset with her for getting the things. You're upset with your father for putting both of you in this position, but especially you. So I will hold this grudge for you. Many other people will hold this grudge for you, and there is somebody out there who will see this and will say, that happened to me. I had a dad just like this who did something just like this. So hopefully you can loosen your grip just a little bit. That's it for this edition of the Grudge Report. I'm Nora McInerny. And sometimes you can let it go, and sometimes it's terrible. Thanks for asking. We actually love to hear from you. So if you have grudges that you would like to share, with us and have me share in a format like this, I will change names. If you would like me to, email it to us. Our email is terrible@feelingsand.co. Our phone number is 612-568-4441. I love hearing your grudges, and I love holding them for you.